You are being recorded.
Hey, good evening. Call this meeting of the Town of Thompson Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It is Monday, June 22nd, 2020 at 7:02 p.m. We will begin with a roll call of commissioners. Mr. Rice.
John Rice here.
Mr. Lenke.
John B. Lanky here.
Mr. Krogel.
Mike Krogel present.
Mr. Poplawski.
Dave Poplawski present.
Mr. Nelson.
Christopher Nelson, present.
Ms. Chattel.
Christine Chattel, present.
Mr. Santos.
Brian Santos, present.
Mr. Blackmer.
Randy Blackmer, present.
And Joseph Brody Brown is present. We will seat David Poplawski for Missy DeRogers and Brian Santos for Charlene Langlois. A reminder to everyone who is joining us via Zoom this evening, as the planner said, this meeting is being recorded. And so we just wanted to remind everyone of that. Item 2, public hearing, none. Item 3, discuss closed public hearing and possible action. BZC application 20-08, applicant J&J Construction LLC, property owner Richard DeRogers, 484 and 486 Quaddick Farm Road, map 158, block 20, lot 81, for a gravel operation permit. I will begin by apologizing, having, trying to keep everything in order as we're meeting via Zoom. I suggested and accepted a motion to amend the agenda for that meeting on June 11th, forgetting that according to the Freedom of Information Act, special meetings, the agendas of special meetings cannot be recorded. Point of order. Ms. Langlois is here. And so Mr. Santos is now seated for Bob Werge. So with that being said, the public hearing itself that was held on June 11th, there was no issue, there's no legal defect to the public hearing as it was held. The subsequent motion to amend the agenda came after the closing of the public hearing. And it is that discussion of the public hearing that today we seek to remediate. So the best plan going forward would be to vote to rescind the actions that were taken during the discussion, the public hearing on June 11th, and to rediscuss and re-vote on that action.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lenke moves to rescind the votes taken in the discussion. Mr. Lenke moves to rescind the votes taken on June 11th in the section discussion and action on public hearing.
I'll second it.
Mr. Krogel seconds. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Can this be done in one fell swoop, or do we have to do them one at a time?
That's a good question. My instinct is that they can be done in one fell swoop.
Well, Mr. Chairman, according to what I'm looking at the minute for the minutes, it says rescind 5 motions and vote of approval, and 1 motion with amendment. Okay, so that means if you want to try to do it all in one shot deal, well, do you just want to take it one at a time? I know it's going to take a little longer, but then we won't have to have any confusion. That would be, a suggestion. But
yeah, if the commission is more comfortable with that, I certainly think we can do it that way. I think a motion to rescind all actions taken during the discussion of the public hearing on June 11th is sufficient, but I'm happy to do it whichever way the commission thinks is most prudent.
I didn't mean to create a hornet's nest. I'm happy with the resending them all at once. It was just a question.
No, and I thank you for the question.
Hi, Joe, John Rice. My input was that we would rescind the 5 motions and the votes of approval and the 1 motion with an amendment and the vote for approval at the meeting of June 11th, 2020. As you mentioned, in one swoop.
Mr. Lanky, is that an accurate representation of the motion you made?
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, that would be
Mr.
fine.
Mr. Krogel?
Accept. Yes.
Can I interrupt here for a minute, Joe?
Done.
Okay, so there were actually 4 motions that you voted on, and then the 5th was a motion, and then the 6th was the amendment for that motion. So you are rescinding actually 5 votes.
Thank you.
Do you have that in front of you?
Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah. Is that clear to everyone that this motion is to rescind all of the votes taken during the discussion and possible action on the public hearing of June 11th, 2020?
Yes.
Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, the motion has been made and seconded to rescind all votes taken during, so all action taken, all motions and approval taken during the discussion of the public hearing on June 11th, 2020. A yes vote rescinds those actions and no vote sustains them. Mr. Rice,
John Rice, yes.
Mr. Lanky,
John B. Linky, yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Mike Kugel, yes.
Mr. Poplawski,
He's got himself muted. Give him a second to unmute himself.
Yeah, I'm in difficulties. My hands are sweating. Yes.
thank you, David Poplawski, yes. Mr. Nelson,
Should I don't know if I should abstain from this because I wasn't present at the meeting. I don't know. So I guess I'll have to say I'll abstain for that reason.
thank you. Mr. Nelson abstains. Ms. Chattel,
Christine Chattel, yes.
Mr. Santos,
Brian Santos, yes.
Ms. Langlois,
Darlene, yes.
Mr. Blackmer,
Randy Blackmer, yes.
Joseph Prody Brown, yes. The motion carries and all action taken during the discussion of the public hearing on June 11th, 2020 are rescinded. To continue with the discussion of the public hearing, which was closed on application 20-08.
Mr. Chairman, John Rice, now, is the motion to approve the application still valid?
No action, no, we've rescinded all of those actions.
All of the actions, okay.
Why did we have to do that? I'm just, when I didn't get on in time to hear, like, what happened?
Sure, so Charlene, the Freedom of Information Act prohibits the amendment of agendas for special meetings. And the discussion of the public hearing was not originally on the agenda for the special meeting. We amended the agenda, which can't be done. So that discussion and action was taken against the Freedom of Information Act.
Who's playing a game on their thing? Like, somebody's playing games on their videos or something. Either mute us all or, because everything's getting broken up.
Yeah, thank you, Charlene. Did you hear the explanation?
Yeah, between the Bing and the Bong, and they've got a prize. Seriously?
So, so the application of the closed public hearing is now before us exactly as it was when that public hearing closed on June 11th.
Mis-
Mr. Rice?
John Rice, I'll make a motion that the approval of, what number is it?
2008.
Let me read the other paper. Okay. Planning and Zoning Commission application number 20-08. The applicant J&J Construction, property owned by Richard DeRozier, 484-86 Quartertown Farm Road, map 158, block 20, lot 81, for a gravel operation permit.
I'll second that, Mr.
I'm sorry, and so John, the motion was what?
A motion for approval.
Motion for approval made by Mr. Rice, seconded by Mr. Lanky. Any discussion on the motion?
Joe, John
Mr.
Rice.
Yeah.
Just a question for Cindy, on the, because I didn't have, I don't know what I did with the site plan, or that was prepared by J&D. I believe last month, because we had to add a couple of things, that, was it plan? You know, those two lots that we had to add. I assume that they were on the plan, but I don't think it was in the original application.
I believe it's 8I in Indiana, Mr. Rice, and 8J.
Yes, and 8J or something, yeah.
Yes, 8J.
Okay, just to verify, Cindy, that is on the site plan that we're approving, correct?
Yes, it is,
Okay,
but you have to amend.
Yeah,
it is-
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Thank you, Cindy. Keep going.
Keep going, John or me?
Yeah, you can. You were saying, Cindy.
All right, so there was 3 amendments on the application that you need to entertain a motion to amend the agenda. And there was
Yeah, the name of the applicant, the 2 lots, and the purpose as a gravel operation in 2 phases.
right.
yeah.
Right, those all amendments to the application need to be made.
Right.
Unless they're on the site plan, which I believe they were.
Yes, they
Correct,
are.
Cindy? They are on a site plan, so I don't think we have to make an amendment to the site plan, because it's on the site plan, correct?
The lots are on the site plan, definitely.
Right.
I mean, I can double check that if you want me to.
I recall seeing that also. Like I say, I don't have it in front of me, but I know those lots were on there, so. But I think, yeah,
I think Mr. Rice.
so I don't
Right,
think we,
but Cindy, the issue was with the application itself, right? Not with the site plan?
It's the application, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the application, John.
You go to page 6 of 8, at the bottom, Mr. Chairman, it says John Rice moved, Randy Blackmore second the motion to amend application 20-08 and add lots 8I and 8J to the site plan.
Mr. Chairman, John, I think my thought was that if it's on the site plan, we don't have to amend it. I think originally that wasn't on a site plan, but the latest site plan that we received prior to that meeting, it was on there.
Okay, all
So
right.
I think my put, no, I'm saying, I think my put is that if it's on the site plan and we're approving that site plan, we're approving everything that's on that site plan. Correct,
Makes
Mr. Chairman?
We're accepting, I mean, I think we're accepting both the application, we're accepting the application and the site plan that comes with it.
Right, exactly.
So I think the amendments to the application were made to ensure consistency between the two.
Correct, Joe.
So that being said, before I would like to see those amendments to the application made before voting for the application.
Well, I'll amend my, my vote to accept it and add lots 8I and 8J to my motion for approval.
And we, Mr. I'm sorry, I don't remember who seconded that John's original motion.
Mr. Lanky,
Mr. Lanky.
Thank you, Gloria.
I concur with I stand with Mr. Rice.
And John, do you want to do anything with the name on the application and the description of the request?
I have to look at what we said last month.
Yeah, I can read it too. So
Okay, all right.
The first was to amend the applicant's name to Richard P. DeRogers, DBA J&J Construction LLC. The second was the lots 8I and 8J, and then amend application to correct description of request to read gravel operation permit in 2 phases.
Okay, I'll add that to the motion for approval.
Mr. Lenke?
I agree. I second it. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
Mr. Nelson?
Can you do it? I thought a DBA and an LLC are they're 2 different things. So I mean, such as, usually it's a name, doing a DBA as the business name, whereas an LLC is a completely different, business. I just don't know if you, and I could be wrong. I'm just bringing it up because I don't know if you can do that.
DBA, doing business as, and LLC is limited liability.
That's for tax purposes and liability.
Right. LLC, limited liability.
Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant, but I'm just asking. That's all.
Thank you.
The one that probably could give us some insight on that a little bit, Mr. Chairman, probably should be the CEO, because then that's probably a little bit in her realm with the DBA and the LLC. But LLC, as I know, is limited liability company. So, it's a company that's very, they're a limited liability. DBA is doing business as. And that's what it is, doing business as. It's how my stump grinding business was.
Okay, I'm looking for the trade certificate that you were sent in your packet. From what I understand, the change originated because when he applied many years ago, that name was actually already taken. So he had to change it for the state, and he came in and changed it to the town clerk's office as his trade certificate. And like I said, I'm looking for it. And believe it or not, I have this this folder so organized. Here it is. I got it. Don't want to just organize it. So It says under the full name J&J Construction LLC, and then he has his name listed as Richard P. DeRosa. And he considers himself a DBA. DBA Richard P. DeRosa LL Construction, J&J Construction LLC. That's how the trade certificate reads.
Okay, I just brought that up, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you for your listening.
Thank you, Mr. Rice.
Mr. Chairman, John Rice, I'm looking at, I hope this is the latest application, and the applicant's name is J&J Construction LLC. So,
Right, and so we want to change that to J&J Construction LLC, DBA Richard DeRosa.
No, the other way.
The other way.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Yeah, so it's just to match the trade certificate, Mr. Rice.
Right,
Word for word.
right.
okay, so I need to further amend my approval to the applicant's name of J&J Construction, DBA Richard DeRosa LLC,
No, John, the way you had done it before, which was Richard DeRozier,
LLC.
DBA, J&J Construction LLC,
Okay.
which is what you had agreed
Okay.
to earlier.
Right, correct.
Boy, I hope Gloria's getting this.
So I will recap it for her as I understand the motion in its current form. The motion is to approve application 20-08 with including the amendments, Richard P. DeRozier, DBA J&J Construction LLC as the applicant name, including lots 8I and J, and changing the description to gravel operation in 2 phases. That is the motion as amended as it stands now.
And what are you going to do about the
And I
change of
concur.
hours?
What?
Yeah, so any further discussion on the motion? Mr. Rice?
No, I concur with what you said, as that's the motion. And to answer Cindy's quick question in between there, I don't have a problem. I know it was brought up about the hours, but I don't think the comment was, I think we would be consistent with our regulations that Saturday work ceases at noontime. That's what our regulation says. The last that was brought up during the discussion was the last gravel permit that we approved. The applicant volunteered not to work on Saturday. That's his prerogative, but our regulations authorizes the applicant to work on Saturday till noontime. So I'm not prepared to add that to my amendment.
Okay, any further discussion from the commission on that? Mr. Rice, is the issue of bonding in your motion?
No, I can, or at least we can make another motion for approval of setting the bond in a separate motion.
Can we make that a separate motion, Mr. Chairman? Would it be better? Or it's, because we are getting confused here. We ain't gonna make that much difference.
I think John, if I may, and Mr. Chairman, our regulations, that's a separate item as to setting the bond for
Yes.
this, and I think I would like to probably just address that separately.
I concur, Mr. Rice.
Okay, sorry. Any further thoughts or discussions from the commission?
Popcorn.
Okay. So the motion is to approve the application with those 3 amendments made to the application. Hearing no further discussion, it will be a yes to approve, no to deny. Mr. Rice,
John Rice, yes.
Mr. Lenke,
John B. Lenke, yes.
Mr. Krovo,
Mike Crowe abstain.
Mr. Poplawski,
I'm going to also abstain.
Mr. Nelson,
Christopher Nelson, yes.
Mr. Santos,
Brian Santos, yes.
Ms. Langlois,
You're muted.
Darlene Langlois, yes.
Mr. Blackmer,
Randy Blackmer, yes.
and Joseph Prody Brown votes no. I would have liked to have kept the hours of operation in.
You missed Christine Chattel.
Oh, I'm sorry, Christine. Sorry, thank you. Christine, Ms. Chattel.
Hey, I agree with you on the hours of operation.
But we're not there yet.
No, yeah, we were. Yeah, that was part of the. So I'm sorry. So your vote, Ms. Chattel, is.
Christine Chattel, no, for the reason of the hours.
Thank you. The application is approved by a vote of 6 to 2 to 2 abstentions. Okay, so we move on to the question of bonding.
Joe, if nobody else is gonna talk here, is that I'll make a motion that the bonding be set at $6,000 an acre as our regulations stipulate for application 20-08.
Just for your information, that would be a total of $28,200.
Well, if I may, just for discussion,
No one's seconded your motion yet, John.
Oh,
so we have
okay.
nothing to
I'll-
say for it.
I'll second it.
Mr. Lenke seconds the motion. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Rice?
yes, in that motion, I believe it's in 2 phases, Cindy, and if I recall, usually we'll set that bonding in phases. So if you can figure out, I think it's a 1 point something acres and the other one, whatever it is. My suggestion would be the bonding would be set in phases. And that's something you'll have to follow up on, Cindy.
Okay, all right. I mean, I can do it right now. I just have to ask Janet a question, if you don't mind. Janet? Is she muted?
Yes, she is. Yeah.
She's still with us?
Yep, she's here.
Yes.
Yeah. Ms. Blanchett.
He's doing phase 2 first, is that correct?
No, he's doing phase 1, and phase 1 is 3.4 acres.
Okay, that's I should have said the 3, okay. All right, so 3.4 times 6,000 equals 20,400. So that would be the cost of your bond.
Why don't we well, what was the total amount when you said in the beginning?
20,400. It's
How much?
20,400.
That's for the first stage.
3.4.
John, that's for phase 1.
Okay, okay.
The total for phases 1 and 2 was 28,200.
Yes.
I don't think it's gonna make that much difference between the 2 phases of the 28, but I mean, not on the bond. Once the bond goes in, it's gonna sit there, and if he finishes phase 1, he gets that money back. So it's better to have all the money up front, in my opinion. So, but Mr. Rice is correct.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'll withdraw my motion. I don't know if anybody seconded it, but.
I did. I'll agree with you.
But I'll make a motion that application 20.008, pay 6,000 per acre per phase 1 and 2.
Okay, from my understanding of, and Gloria, please correct me if I'm wrong. Your original motion, Mr. Rice, was to do that, was to bond at 6,000 an acre, which Mr. Lenke seconded. You then suggested having the bond in 2 phases, but there was no action on that as a motion.
Okay.
So my understanding is that your original motion to bond both phases for a total of $28,200
That's the way to go.
Still stands.
still stands and is seconded
Okay.
by Mr. Lenke.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, a yes vote will bond application 20-08 at $6,000 an acre for a total of $28,200. A no vote will not. Mr. Rice,
John Rice, yes.
Mr. Lenke,
John B. Lenke, yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Yes.
Mr. Poplawski,
He's muted.
Yeah, you
I
know,
know. I know. Yes. Yes. Dave Poplawski. Yes.
thank you. Mr. Nelson,
Christopher Nelson, yes.
Mr. Santos,
Brian Santos, yes.
Ms. Langlois. Charlene, you're muted too.
I do it so you don't hear any background noise. Charlene Langlois, yes.
Mr. Blackmer,
Randy Blackmer, yes.
Ms. Chattel,
So yes.
Joseph Brody Brown, yes. Okay. Sorry, I keep losing my agenda. Okay, item 4, approved minutes. We have 4 meetings which we have minutes for. The first is the regular meeting on May 26, 2020.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of the meeting of May 26, 2020, unless there are any amendments to it, if somebody knows. Otherwise, I'm good with it. Yeah, I got it over here. It's over here. I got it right here.
Okay, the motion has been made to accept the minutes from May 26, 2020,
I'll second.
seconded by Mr. Santos. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, it's a yes to approve the minutes, no, not to approve. Mr. Wright, oh, Mr. Lenke.
John B. Lenke, yes.
Oh, I thought you had a comment. Mr. Rice,
John Rice, yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Yes.
Mr. Poplawski,
I'm going to abstain.
Mr. Nelson. Chris, you're muted.
Christopher Nelson, yes.
Mr. Santos,
Brian Santos, yes.
Ms. Chattel,
So yes.
Ms. Langlois,
Charlene Langlois, yes.
Mr. Blackmer.
Randy Blackmer, yes.
Okay, our next item is the, sorry, I keep losing my windows.
June 2nd.
June 2nd, the subcommittee meeting on regulation rewrite.
I'll motion. I'll
wait,
motion to, go ahead,
The-
John.
Yes. Mike Krogel, motion to accept the minutes.
I'll second.
And Mr. Krogel moves to accept the minutes of the June 2nd meeting of the subcommittee. Mr. Santos seconds. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, it's a yes to approve, no, not to approve. Mr. Rice,
John Rice, yes.
Mr. Lenke,
John B. Lenke, yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Yes.
Mr. Poplawski,
I'm going to abstain from that one. I wasn't there either.
Mr. Nelson,
Christopher Nelson, abstain.
Mr. Santos,
Brian Santos, yes.
Ms. Chattel. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Christine Chattel abstain. I wasn't present.
Thank you. Sorry. Ms. Langlois,
Charlene Langlois, yes.
Mr. Blackmer,
Believe I wasn't there. I'll abstain.
and Joseph Brody Brown, yes. Those minutes are approved. June 9th, 2020, Subcommittee on Regulation Rewrites.
I'll make a motion to accept the subcommittee meeting minutes on June 9th.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Ms. Langlois, seconded by Mr. Lenke. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, it's a yes to approve, no to not. Mr. Rice,
John Rice, abstain.
Mr. Lenke,
Not there, the reason being I wasn't in attendance.
thank you. Mr. Lenke,
John B. Linky, yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Mike Krogel, yes.
Mr. Poplawski,
I abstain.
Mr. Nelson,
Christopher Nelson, abstain because of lack of attendance.
Mr. Santos,
Brian Santos, yes.
Ms. Chattel,
Christine Chattel abstained. I was not present.
Ms. Langlois,
Charlene Langlois, yes.
Mr. Blackmer,
I abstain, wasn't there.
Joseph Brody Brown, yes. The minutes of the June 11th, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission special meeting.
That one's a good one.
Well, didn't we just?
We're just gonna accept that meeting as is, even though we kind of really threw it out the window, correct, Mr. Chairman?
Well, yeah, I mean, so the minutes are, I think we can accept the minutes as an accurate reflection of what
Okay.
occurred at that meeting.
All right, okay. I'll make that motion.
Mr. Linke moves to accept the minutes of the June 11th, 2020 special meeting.
I'll
John
second.
Rice, second.
I think Mr. Santos beat you to it, Mr. Rice.
Not fast. No, maybe Brian was faster.
I heard you first, John. I heard
He's
you
young.
first.
Oh, that's
He's
fine.
younger than I am, so he's faster.
Yeah, I heard Brian first, so that's interesting. I must be closer to him on the internet.
Yeah,
Any
just down the
discussion?
street.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, it'll be a yes to accept, no to not accept. Mr. Rice,
John Rice, yes.
Mr. Lenke,
John B. Linky, yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Mike Krogel, abstain.
Mr. Poplawski,
Dave Poplawski abstained. I
Mr.
promise I'll be at the next one.
well, you're here tonight, so we're happy for
I
that.
know. I'm making up for it.
Mr. Nelson,
Christopher Nelson, abstain.
Mr. Santos,
Brian Santos, yes.
Ms. Chattel,
Chattel, yes.
Ms. Langlois,
Charlene Langlois, yes.
Mr. Blackmer,
Randy Blackmer, yes.
Joseph Brody Brown, yes. Item 5, applications received. Application 20-12, Roland Zeleny, owner of record, Sewat Hydroelectric LLC, for property at Old Route 12, map 67, block 102, lot 26 and 27, zone industrial, for construction of two 220 kilowatt AC PV solar arrays, one reconfigured from previous approval, application 19-23.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to accept the application number 20-12 and set it for a public hearing on 7/27/2020.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Rice and seconded by Mr. Santos to accept application 20-12 for a public hearing at our next regular meeting on July 27th at 7 p.m. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, it will be a yes to accept for public hearing, no, not to. Mr. Rice,
John Rice, yes.
Mr. Lenke,
John B. Linky, yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Mike Krogel, yes.
Mr. Poplawski,
Dave Poplawski, yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Christopher Nelson, yes.
Mr. Santos,
Brad Santos, yes.
Ms. Chattel,
Christine Chappell, yes.
Ms. Langlois. That was a yes vote, a little quiet, I believe. Mr. Blackmer
Randy Blackmer, yes.
and Joseph Prody Brown, yes. Item 6, applications received after agenda posted. Cindy, I'm assuming none, Cindy?
None, nope.
Great, thank you. Item 8, reports of officers and staff. Director of Planning and Development report.
You missed
No,
one.
Joe, you skipped citizens' comments.
I'm sorry, I 100% did, and I apologize for that immensely. Item 7, citizens' comments.
So I'm turning on the chat function, and if a member of the public has a comment, they can type their name and address, and the chairman will call on you in order. And chat is now enabled.
If you'd like to make a citizen's comment, please type your name and address in the chat box. Ms. Burlingame?
Hello, Jennifer Burlingame, 480 Aquatic Town Farm Road. I just want to bring up a few things because I did send over a complaint about how the public hearing was conducted and run, and I'm familiar with Robert's rules, I'm familiar with the statutes, and I am familiar with FOIA. You are still in violation. I'm giving you the warning now. You had us turned off, you let us speak once, and you conducted it inaccurately. Number 2, John Rice, your son is on this site plan. You should be 100% recusing yourself from any discussion or votes. Timothy Rice is on the site plan. And by the way, Chris Nelson, you are 100% correct. You cannot be a DBA and an LLC. In an LLC that's owned by another company in Middlebury, Connecticut. Go online, spend 5 minutes, board members, some of you, and do some research and look and see. Guess what? It's inaccurate. That's all I have to say. And thanks for putting him on Saturdays. That's just great. He was
Awesome
off
job, guys.
Saturdays. Thank you. The state will be watching this next.
Thank you. Ms. Sinan?
Good evening, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
I had problems earlier with a Zoom meeting, so wanted to make sure. So the only thing that I really wanted to discuss and point out tonight was it was brought to our attention at last week's Board of Finance meeting that Northeast Sand and Gravel is delinquent on their taxes. And a resident pointed out, hey, didn't we just renew their permit for gravel mining? And I know there was a second issue that was brought up that day about this company illegally connecting to our sewer and not paying the $4,000 commercial hookup fee to the WPCA. To which one of the members asked, what does this have to do with the gravel permit? It has everything to do with the gravel permit or any other permit that's issued in this town. You can't get a building permit if your taxes aren't paid. If your business taxes aren't paid, and in this case, it's $11,579, then you should not get a permit. And these are just issues, I'm pointing this out because these are issues that we need to be better about. Because come July 1st, it's going to be a $22,000 bill. So it was something that I thought I needed to point out. I do think it's important that you as elected officials take the time to say, hey, you know what? Yes, you owe the WPCA $4,000 and you owe taxes in $11,000. So once that's paid up, we'll issue you your permit. And that's all I wanted to point out tonight, but thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, can I make a comment? John Rice?
Or
is that under citizens?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
wait for Commissioner's comment.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Shouldn't that have been brought up under citizens, under commission comments?
Yes,
But
okay.
any other comments from the citizens at this time? Seeing none, I will move on to the next item agenda, unless there's someone who can't get in to the chat and wishes to speak.
Like there are no phone-only participants, Joe.
Okay, thank you, Tara. Okay. Item 8, reports of officers and staff. 8A, Director of Planning and Development report.
Nothing in particular for this month. I mean, the big news for us has been the continuing work on the rewrite, which is going along at a good pace, and we will see you again on Wednesday. One thing I will bring up that's outside the discussion guide a little bit, although we did talk about it a little bit last week, which is the alignment of the Downtown Mill District by renaming it the Downtown Mill Rehabilitation District to the resolution that was proposed by the Board of Selectmen. Concurrent with that, I had an email from Ken Slater asking for a copy of the proposed map, and I did notice, because we haven't been giving it a lot of scrutiny in that area, that some of the spot zoning that is currently in place was retained by NECOG, and I'm going to propose that we change some of that spot zoning to bring it into the Downtown Mill District. Notably, those are the properties commonly known as Quinn's Shirt Shop, the bakery. I think it's the property that includes Milltown Grill, although it's hard to tell on the map, and then a 40-acre, I think it's 40 acres, a parcel up behind Town Hall. Those were at one time spot zoned for commercial. There is no benefit to having them be differently zoned than the Downtown Mill District. They actually get more flexibility that way. So that's just an FYI for some future point in that discussion.
Great, thank you. 8B, ZEO memo.
I'm just looking at the memo. The Brickyard is on the agenda. The letter from Ken Bosley is in the agenda. And discussion of the new business that Selectman St. Ange is going to bring up on 1395 Riverside Drive is on the agenda. Mike Bodansky's request for signage is on the agenda. And Miss Prescott's request is on the agenda. So we will be discussing, I do not think there was anything else in my report. Oh, yes, there was, I apologize. On the budget report, I have well, first off, there's a mistake in my comments on the budget. It should be professional affiliations services instead of fees. And I had them encumbered that this morning on the finance office to fiscal year 2020 to 2021. And then I also encumbered the balance of the office supplies to fiscal year 2020 to 2021. And I actually noticed there was a mistake too on that, on the date. So just noticed that. Any questions on those two items? And that's
Cindy,
it.
just John Rice, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, just to clarify, the the encumbered money is for professional services.
Right,
Okay?
that's what I corrected that, so
Yeah, but
services, yeah.
I thought you just mentioned fees or something else, but
Yeah,
it
I
is
corrected
the
it's the word,
$1,500, okay,
the word fees is incorrect and should be services.
right, okay.
Okay, any other questions for Cindy? Okay, item 8C, Town of Thompson Budget Report, April 2020 and May 2020.
I guess, John Rice, Mr. Chairman, everybody, I assume, received the budget report. We still, well, we used up 75% of our budget. And like Cindy just indicated, in the event with this update of regulations, we felt it best to encumber that money, that $1,500 that we have there. And that's basically it. So we have one more month to go before the new budget.
Any questions for Mr. Rice?
That, Mr. Rice, that 1,500, that's still not gonna, that still leaves something for us to get through to the end of the month of July?
Yeah, we encumbered that money, so it's staying in that budget. And we're
Okay.
continuing it till next year budget, because I don't have next year's budget and what we allocated for that for next year. But
Okay.
we wanted to make sure we had money in there to pay the review of the regulations and whatever else needs to be done with the regs.
Great. Thank you. Item 9, correspondence. Minutes from the ZBA of June 8th, 2020. Two notices of public hearing from the town of Douglas. Any questions on those items?
Did you, Mr. Chairman, did you, anybody get to really pay attention to the zoning board of appeals, June 8th minutes of the meeting?
Go ahead, Mr. Lingy. Is there something you'd like to draw our attention to?
It pertains, I believe, to 1395 Riverside Drive.
Okay. And what did, yeah, go ahead.
I think he's frozen.
Gotcha.
Froze? Yeah.
We can hear you now, John.
All right, let's see what happens here.
Take this phone call.
Go ahead. Hello? Yeah.
John, did you want to say something about?
Oh, boy.
Looks like we lost him.
Okay. Well, I guess I would just encourage you to, as Mr. Lenke asked you, directed our attention to the item about 1395 Riverside, which is coming up on our agenda.
Well, the item was actually 1391 Riverside, which involved 1395, which is town-owned property. So if you have any questions on it, I can answer your questions.
Gotcha. Hold on.
Or Kevin can, because he's here, the chairman of the ZBA.
Joseph. I'm frozen out of the meeting.
We can hear you now, John.
Oh, okay, because I got no picture, I got nothing, so. So, all right, okay, just checking.
Okay,
I
item.
can't hear anybody else.
Oh, jeez.
Now he's on.
Okay, item 9. correspondence. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I keep losing my place. I apologize.
We go up to number 10, Joe, unless John Linky has something to bring out to our attention.
Yeah,
with
my
ZBA.
apologies. Item
But,
10, finding of Mylars.
Let me call John to see if he can call in, because he said he can't hear us. So let me call him.
He can also, dial into one of the numbers if he's having a hard time connecting to audio. Those numbers are on the top of the agenda in the packet as well.
Okay, it's ringing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you dial in? Can you hear anybody, John?
I can't hear nobody.
Okay.
I got my own picture, that's it.
Okay, so if you dial in, you can at least hear on the phone. Do you want the number for it to dial in?
All right, I gotta figure that one out. Okay.
Here, well, I've got it right here if you want to write it down.
Hang on a minute. Yeah, go ahead. It's like I just lost everything.
Okay, it's 1-929
929
436
436
2866.
2866. Any
Okay.
PIN number to go with that?
861 8676 4276.
4276. I'm gonna have Mike Krugel dial it in on his phone.
Okay, did you want to say something about what was in the ZBA?
Yeah,
Okay,
it
all
had
right.
to do, well, whatever. But
But actually, if we can hear him now, so why don't you go ahead and say what you're going to say, John?
All right, they can hear you because I have you on the phone, John. So,
the thing is under when I was reading the minutes of the ZBA, it was pertaining to the 1395 Riverside thing. Unless they want to, we put it off until that comes up on the item. Yeah, it'll be under new business. Okay, so I just hope that everybody read that as well before we get to that new business of item 12A.
okay, did you hear that, everybody?
Yeah, thank you, John.
Okay. All right, so try calling in.
Yep, we're doing it now.
Okay, I'm going to hang up.
Yep.
Fine. Oh, you want me to hang up or not?
What's that?
Yeah.
You want me to hang up? Please.
Right
Okay.
there.
Yeah, they dialed it. Okay, item 10, signing of Mylar. None.
None. None.
Item 11, old business. Cindy, if you could just.
John, you've got to shut your iPad off if that's what you're on. That's what's giving you the feedback, having both open.
Is that better?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Now it is.
Okay.
Item 12A, I'm sorry, 11A, Brickyard Road bonding explanation.
Hang on a minute.
Okay, now we've got it.
I'm gonna kill my iPad.
Yeah. Cindy, did you, the Brickyard Road?
Okay, all right, I just had it here and then I had to put it down. Okay, here it is. Okay, so I sent you the thread of emails concerning the bonding between Attorney Roberts and Orla and myself. The bottom line is that Orla went to the bank and asked at the bank, she asked if, let me see what she's asked them. Well, anyways, whose name the bond was in. The bank sent it back, and I gave you the copy of what they sent back. And the only two people that signed that bond were the two selectmen at that time, Larry Groh and Michael Martin. And the owner, Dudley Concrete, did not sign the bond. And so, so she said, yes, the town can take the bond unilaterally, and thank you. So right now, it would be your decision is to go and ask the selectmen when that is an approved reclaimed project. If the owner, Brian, of that land can receive the bond money for reclaiming it. He will not start it until he has assurance from the town that he is going to receive the bond money. So it's in your hands as to if you want to send this over to the Board of Selectmen for approval. Any questions? Did you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just trying to make sure I digested this correctly. So you're saying that the bank would allow the money to be transferred out at the discretion of the selectmen when the project is completed?
Yes, but he wants the assurance that the selectmen will sign it, give the money to him, providing the reclamation is according to the current regulations.
I'm sorry, this is Amy St. Ange, 139 Riverside Drive, speaking as first selectman. Cindy, when you say him, can you give me the background on this? Because I don't know. Are we talking about an individual that actually didn't put up the bond?
Exactly. The individual, Brian, it's, I believe it's HRYZAN, something like that, on Brickyard Road. He owns the property. He leased it out to Dudley Concrete. They started mining it, and they the whole deal fell through. The two of them were speaking to each other, and we're requesting Brian to reclaim that property, and he will if the bond will be released to him.
Okay.
That's the short of it. I can come down and give you a more detailed explanation.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Cindy.
Okay.
All right, this is Randy Blackmore. I'd move that we forward this to the selectmen with a recommendation that they offer the money to Brian Hergen when the reclamation is completed, to the CEO's satisfaction.
And Dave Poplawski, I'll second that motion.
The motion has been made to forward a recommendation to the selectmen to release the bond
Upon completion of the reclamation.
Correct, to the CEO satisfaction.
Yeah.
Any discussion on the motion? I guess my question is that a recommendation we make to the selectmen, or is that a decision we
I think it has to be to the selectmen because they're the ones that are going to have to release the bond according to the bank, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Great.
Welcome back, Don.
That answers my question.
I actually didn't understand your question, Joe. There was a little interference there. What was the question?
Yeah, my question is whether we needed to forward it to the selectmen or if the release of the bond is within this commission's authority.
From what I understand from Orla, the selectmen have to approve it because they're the ones that signed it. The office signed it.
Okay, yeah, like I said, that answers my question.
Yeah, but I think John Rice, is that you're correct. I think the approval has to come from the commission to release the bond. As Dandy was saying, upon the investigation of the CEO that it met our regulations. And then we would release the bond. I'm not sure why the selectmen are getting involved with this.
Well, because Brian wants the assurance that as long as the Planning and Zoning Commission approve it, Brian wants the assurance, once you approve it, that the selectmen will release the money. It's
Okay, would it
obvious nobody's gonna
satisfy
release.
Cindy? Would it satisfy that in Randy's motion that it be in the minutes and we forward the minutes to Mr. Hershen, saying that upon successfully completing the restoration of that site and upon your approval, that the bond would be released to him? I think that may be the easiest way instead of going through another hoop for him.
Yeah, I just don't I mean, we release bonds regularly, right?
Right.
So
But the bond, but when we release a bond, it's usually to the person who put the bond up, and this time we're not. We're putting, it's a third party involved.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lanky?
the reason it's going this way is because the original party supposedly that put the bond up are no longer in business. They went out, they're gone. And Mr. Hershen was owed money, so he wants to use the money of the bond money to help get, so he can do the reclamation, so you don't have to really take it out of his pocket to get it done. That's a good point, because then all of a sudden somebody could come out of the woodwork, and that's the whole thing behind it. That's why we had the CEO get a hold of council to see if this could be done. They said yes. Then Mr. Blackmer's motion and everything is, as far as I'm concerned, is valid.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody wants to chime in, you're welcome to it.
But do you want me to go to the Board of Selectmen to say they will agree to this once it's reclaimed? They're not going to give him the money until it's reclaimed.
I understand that, Ms. Dunn. Then that's the whole point of it is we wanted, this thing has been sitting there for over 10 years.
Right.
All because of that other party that no longer is in business. They're gone, they're out, they went bankrupt. Right? And name it, they've gone it. So that money's been sitting there, and he just wants it to come his way to help him to incur the cost of what it's going to take for him to reclaim it. So anything like Mr. Blackmer said a couple meetings ago, about 6-7 months ago, whatever, anything above that 6,000 or 7,000 that's in there, that's on him. So that would help him deter the cost of to reclaim the land and meet your specifications by the planning and zoning regs.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a suggestion here that it might be clarifying to simplify, for whoever would like to amend or simplify the motion, that it be something along the lines of a motion that the bond will be released to Mr. Hershen rather than to the original poster of the bond, because that's the only issue you guys are really going over here. Whether a bond gets paid out at reclamation, that's a part of the regulatory process.
Right.
So it's just clarifying the person to whom the bond is ultimately going, not that the bond will be released. I think that's the confusion here.
But the bottom line is, unless he has written assurance that that bond is going to be released to him, he's not going to start his reclamation. So that's why I'm asking, do we go to the selectmen to get that assurance? Because you guys say yes, release it to him.
Cindy, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't council's response say that it was within the purview of the commission?
Correct.
To release that?
Yes, but yes, you can, and you tell the Board of Selectmen you want it released, and they have to agree to it. So
where does the attorney say that?
Because it's in there. I don't know. I'd have to look at the papers again.
Okay, so talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Who, with the bond that we just, put in place today, who signs that bond?
Did you ask me a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I was looking at the papers.
the bond that we just put in place this evening.
Right.
Who are the signatures on that bond?
You'd have to ask Marla about that, but I believe it's the selectman's office.
Okay,
I mean,
so
not Marla, Orla. I believe
Cindy, yeah, Orla. Cindy,
if I could
Joe,
just
go ahead. I'm sorry, Joe,
continue.
go ahead.
So my point would just be so that if all of these bonds are signed with the selectmen, and yet we regularly within the course of our action release them, I don't understand why, when council has told us it's within our purview to release this bond when it's reclaimed to our satisfaction, we would include the selectmen.
Yeah. Cindy, Joe, if I may, ask Cindy,
Right.
where did this come from that the selectmen have to get involved with this? Is that something that Orla told you, or what is this?
I believe it is. I'm looking for Robert's answer here.
Well, I concur with Joe. I read that, and that's what he said. And it's always been the purview of the commission. Once the reclamation is satisfactory to the CEO and it meets our regulation, we release the bond. Bingo.
Okay, yeah, you're right. It's right here. Yeah. Yeah. I feel that I'm getting that information because of my conversations with Orla. And I can, revisit that with her concerning, who actually signs the release. So, I guess right now, according to Roberts, what you're doing is accurate, saying that you release the bond when it's reclaimed according to the regulations.
Why don't we release the bond, make the statement that we will release the bond to Mr. Hershen? Put it right in the minutes.
Right, that's the point. Mr. Lenke, did you want to say something?
My chain of thought, you just.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, but what the other thing is if it's considered, is it a passbook, as they call it at the bank? So they decided way back that anytime there's going to be a bond put up for whatever reason in the top for anything, projects or whatever, it would have to be a bond at the bank and have two signatures on it, so nobody could walk in. That one person couldn't walk in and pull the money out. So whoever's the second signature on that bond, I guess, is the one. So if it was a first selectman per se, back when, 10, 15 years ago, or 12 years ago, then it would have to be a selectman for a select person that has to sign off on it. That's the only thing. You have to find out whose signature was on that passport, as they call it.
It's the two selectmen's signatures on the passbook,
So what
or on the bond.
Who did they say they would release it to?
Bank would give it to the town, then the town would give it. That's where the confusion's coming in. Mr. Rice is correct. We do, we okay it and all this stuff, but for it to get paid out back to whoever's doing the reclamation, whose signature was on that, put on that bond at the time? Was it a first selectman, or was it a chairman of the planning and zoning, plus the person that put the money up for the bond?
But John, that's my point. I don't sign any bonds.
No.
In my entire term as chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, I haven't signed a single bond.
I'm going back 10, 12 years ago. Okay.
But we release bonds.
Right.
We release bonds.
But so it has to, so if we say yes, like Mr. Rice said, then it goes, it's getting confusing.
Joe, I think that
You don't need to confirm your process. You just need to confirm the person to whom the bond will be authorized. That is the piece that is critical right now.
Mr. Blackman's.
If I may, John, I
Right.
think the problem being is that Dudley Concrete, as mentioned, they're out of business. So
Correct.
I think if that, just as Tara just mentioned, if we make it that upon successfully completion of the reclamation per the CEO, the monies for that bond will go to Mr. Hershen. And I would suggest that that wording be taken to Orla, because she'll sign the check and make sure that's okay. I would think that's the only way out.
So the motion in front, before us by Mr. Blackmer is that that this commission recommend the release of the bond to Mr. Hershen to the Board of Selectmen upon reclamation to the satisfaction of the ZEO.
Can I just interject here? Someone had asked me
Sure.
what other bonds are made out to, and I'm looking at some records in a particular file I happen to have here. And one gravel operation, the paper for Citizen National Bank says an account with Town of Thompson, and then this one happened to be particular Barnes Concrete. So it is made out to the Town of Thompson.
Yeah.
That being, Orla would release the bond
Okay.
upon our approval. I don't think that we want, I think what you've been saying, Joe, just the way we've been consistent is that if the
If I may.
reclamation is done properly, we authorize the release. That's it.
Mr. Blackmer, would you consider rewording your motion?
Yep, go ahead.
Would you consider rewording your motion to, the bond will be released to Mr. Hershen upon successful reclamation to the ZEO's satisfaction?
Yes.
And Mr. Poplawski, will you second that motion as motion as
I will second that motion as amended, Dave Poplawski.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, it is a yes to release to Mr. Hershen upon successful satisfactory reclamation. Mr. Rice.
John Rice, yes.
Mr. Poplawski.
Dave Poplawski, yes.
Mr. Santos.
Ryan Santos, yes.
Mr. Lenke.
John B. Linky, yes.
Mr. Krogel.
Mike Krogo, yes.
Ms. Langlois.
Charlene Langlois, yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Christopher Nelson, yes.
Ms. Chattel.
Hell, yes.
Mr. Blackmer.
Randy Blackmer, yes.
Joseph Perotti Brown, yes. Item 10B, not 10B, 11B, sorry. Item 11B. Read into the record communication from Selectman Ken Beausoleil. This refers to a correspondence that Mr. Beausoleil sent on May 26th, the date of our last regular meeting, regarding 1395 Riverside Drive. It wasn't read into the record at that meeting because so Mr. Beausoleil has requested that it be read into the record as he wished it had been done on May 26th. So here it is. To Planning and Zoning Commission members, I see that you have received a request from the First Selectman, Amy St. Ange, to discuss the selling of this property. Currently, the Board of Selectmen are unaware of any request to purchase this property. The history of this property, as I can recall, town acquired property in 2007 by tax sale. The town owns the Langer Pond, French River Dam, and water rights to generate hydropower under the old historic stone mill at 1405. In 2009-10, the Board of Selectmen was in discussion with the owners of 1405 Riverside Drive to acquire the mill in exchange for a portion of 1395 Riverside Drive property. The town would have leased the stone mill to a developer who would have restored the building and generate power. The lease also provided it be used to educate students on hydropower generation. The project failed to move forward due to the economy and ownership status of the 1405 property. During the fall of 2015, First Selectman Paul Lenke had UConn engineering students develop plans to create a parking area and canoe kayak launch from where 1395 Riverside Drive meets the river. The project is still a possibility. This would tie in well with the River Mill redevelopment, and even better if the town was able to extend the conservation easement from Heritage Park to 1395 Riverside Drive along the river. The property ownership was resolved and discussion resumed on the Stone Mill Hydro site around 2017-2018. The current owner, Aries Co. Realty Trust Principal Art Venuti, experienced some personal issues, and the discussions have been slow-moving. It is possible that P&Z may have had discussions on this property when the hydro project was first proposed. Thank you for your time, Ken Beausoleil, Selectman. All right. Item 12, new business. Item 12A, First Selectman St. Ange request to sell 1395 Riverside Drive. Cindy, did you want to?
Well, no, you can turn Amy on because she's the one that's going to speak on this.
Great, Ms. St.
Yeah,
Ange.
she's unmuted herself. She's ready to go.
Okay, Amy St. Ange, speaking as First Selectman. I'm coming before the commission tonight to request permission to sell 1395 Riverside Drive. I know it was supposed to be on the agenda last month, and I had read the ordinance as far as property sales incorrectly, and I thought I had to go to P&Z before I went to Board of Selectmen. So since then, I brought it before the Board of Selectmen, and on a 2-to-1 vote, we decided to come to you and request permission to put the site up for bid. My reasoning is that we've owned the property since 2007. The Yukon study, although addressed some feasibility, there were some issues as far as turning it into a kayak launch area. The property has become more of a liability than it has an asset. And for the sake of being able to take care of the other properties that the town owns adequately, I think it's in the best interest of the town at this time to put this property up for bid.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
So what was the question on the right of way across it? Or doesn't that enter into this?
From the ZBA minutes, Mr. Blackmer?
Yeah.
I believe Mr. Bino is in the meeting and he is unmuted and would be able to share his thoughts and information on that.
I could. Good evening, members. How are you?
Good evening.
Good.
We did have a meeting last month regarding this issue, and the 1395 I'm sorry, the 1391 party is claiming that they have a prescriptive easement over the property, which is a rather vague way to get land. They're claiming they've owned this, or they've used this land, or somebody has used this land continuously for 14 years without interruption. And according to a prescriptive easement, it has to be done hostilely. That means without the permission of the owners. And at our meeting, the board members came to the conclusion that it probably had permission, and that's why nobody had ever written this easement into the deed after some 50 or 60 years and multiple change of ownerships on both properties. So there is a legal liability or a challenge possibly going forward with the owners of 91, I'm sorry. So therein lies your liability. I'm not sure if they're willing to go to court and fight for it or not, but that's the issue. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you.
So does the town own the land?
The town owns the land, but
And
the adjacent party claims that they have a prescriptive easement, which is it doesn't even spell out the actual boundaries. It just claims that they have a right of way into the property because it was used for 14 continuous years without, and that's the key, without the permission of the owners. And I think the board felt that over the years, somebody or probably most of the people had given permission. That's why it was never written into the deed. So the burden of proof, according to our attorney, would be on them. Of course, land courts are, you never know.
Thank you, Mr.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wright.
Kevin, reading your minutes for your meeting of June 8th, it indicates that the town building department has no permits relative to the garage, which is served by the driveway across the town's property. The applicant's house was also in existence, which precludes access to the garage. So, like you say, I'm not a lawyer either, but I think the individual possibly was using that for access to the garage without the town's permission. So
I think they had the permission of the town.
yeah,
I
but they
think
can't provide that.
Well, in order for them to be successful in their prescriptive easement, they have to prove that they were using it without the permission, not with the permission. And I think that, well, certainly there's a 14-year window. The town has not owned that property for 14 years. So you'd have to move back into the previous owners. And I remembered Al Stack being there, and I don't think Al Stack would let somebody cross his property without his permission.
Mhm.
I don't know if anybody else knew Al Stack, but that's.
Yeah, you're right, Kevin.
So it was my contention that they must have had verbal permission from these owners to cross the land. And if they did have that permission, it negates their right to a prescriptive easement. It doesn't negate their right to go to Superior Court, but in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer either, I don't think the burden of proof, our lawyer says, is on them. And to me, they didn't prove it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Mr. Krogel.
I don't recall everything, but if this person is using the property without permission, I'm not sure if it has to be for 15 or 20 years.
14.
But they have the legal right to do so. And I also believe that that time frame starts and ends with every time the property is bought or sold.
No.
So if somebody bought the land 5 years ago, that would set the process all over again.
That's from what I've read, that's not correct.
It's been a long time, but well, number two, if they did get permission from the previous owners, it's
that makes their prescriptive easement go away. They don't have one. The only way they have a prescriptive easement is they have to use it openly and hostilely without the permission of the owners. And it was my contention that they must have had permission from the owners.
Okay, so if they received permission from the owners, the owner can take the permission back.
And I think that's what the towns did, was if they were giving them permission, I think before their right, the town has not owned the property for 14 years. If the town didn't exercise its right soon, then I think it could possibly, the argument could be made that, you know, they have a prescriptive easement.
So it comes down, Kevin, what you're saying, Mr. Beano, it comes down to a burden of proof, like you said.
Yeah, I think that is what Mr. Bino may be saying. But I also wonder if we're relitigating something that the Zoning Board of Appeals has decided on, and the issue that's before us is the sale of the property.
Well, I'm just trying to explain the liability part of it. That's my purpose here, to show you what we did and why we did it and what jeopardy the town possibly might be in.
Understood, yeah.
So what jeopardy, what the jeopardy we're in? We're in a jeopardy if we keep the land, or we're in a jeopardy if we sell the land?
Well, I guess The jeopardy we face is them going to Superior Court and having to defend our actions. Now, whether or not they'd be willing to put that money up, and the burden of proof will be on them. It would be costly for them. It would be costly for us. I don't think they could prove it. They'd have to bring people there that are deceased to make their case. Rather difficult.
All right.
Well, was it the,
Lincoln?
Mr. Chairman? I think that when that property got taken over or because of the taxes or whatever, it was, I guess they were just looking at it as part of conservation type for the town. Like we have these other properties, that were given to the town by Mr. Snee, Merrill Snee, and a few others. It's town property, like the Teague building on Main Street, that's part of town property that's maintained, so, if you want to sell this property, then what's the thing about, why don't we just put the rest of the property that we own up for sale? Or, go out for bid. So
I could be wrong, but I'm just thinking that you have a choice to either possibly negotiate your way out of it or go to court. That's kind of how I see it. But if they continue to use the land and you don't do anything about it after issuing this cease and desist, I would say that they would probably have a prescriptive easement because you've tried to stop them and you were unsuccessful. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but that's just how I see it.
Kevin, are you aware, John Rice, are you aware of any signs up there of private property, do not access Town of Thompson, that type of thing?
I am not.
That's posted?
I am not, John.
This is Amy St. Ange again. Additionally to this prescriptive easement issue, the property also became dumping ground for broken up motorhomes, cars, boats. The former tenant of 1405, which is the adjacent property, a renter of space in that property, strewn trash and debris and large scale junk all over the property. So that was an additional liability. When you own a property and it just sits there, and you're right, there's no signs that say no trespassing, etc. And it's up for people to do whatever they want. So
people do whatever they want in the town of Thompson anyway.
well, maybe
They'll dump trash anywhere.
But maybe, Charlene, because boards and commissions don't want to stand up and say it's not right.
Exactly.
I think people say it's right, or say it's right or wrong.
No,
unfortunately it doesn't follow through.
I recall at the last meeting you said this commission was not tasked with enforcing things.
No, because we can't pay our zoning enforcement officer enough to get out of her chair.
That has nothing to do with this
enforce.
right now.
Guys, I think we're off topic here. I think that the issue before you is an 824 approval for sale as requested by the Board of Selectmen. Obviously, having Mr. Bino speak on behalf of ZBA is tangential and related to that, but
correct.
You're going beyond the topic at hand.
What's the 820, what's 824?
Zoning.
Isn't that the statute for that the Board of Selectmen has to go to P&Z for the approval, essentially, to put that's all that's on
It's
the
an
agenda.
Right, you're talking about an ordinance rather than a statute.
No, that's.
Yes,
that's
it's an ordinance. It's only come up a couple of times, but that's what the action is under.
Okay. Well, if I may add, Mr. Chairman, I would like to look at the possibility of that land, because there's been an inquiry from the owners of 1395, which is the large mill, etc., that they want to develop that property. And going back to John's thing of we the town acquired that through a tax sale for $30,000, not paying their taxes. And that land initial back then, we says, okay, let's see if we can have access to the river. That's why Yukon did that study, et cetera, et cetera. So my thing, I think if there is people I'm aware of that bought that property at 1395 Riverside that wants to develop that property, and they could use that land as part of it. And I think if the selectmen would sit down with these people and maybe come to a consensus that everybody wins, in that the possibility of them being the owners of that mill, developing a ramp so that you can launch a canoe, or
Excuse
the
me,
other
Mr.
thing?
Price,
I'm
if I
sorry.
can correct, I'm not sure if you're aware that 1395 is actually the home adjacent that's claiming.
Okay, I'm sorry, then it's
easement.
14, I'm sorry, the 1405, Kevin, you're right. 1405 is the mill that mill complex.
And if I could just inject this, if you're going to sell it to the mill, you're still going to have, I think, to solve the legal challenge of the prescriptive easement, I think.
Right, I know, but I think that can be all negotiated.
I'm sure it
In
could.
some way, is that I'm making the assumption that the mill developers could care less if this guy traverses their property, give him an easement to get to his garage. That's what he's concerned with. And I think I would like to see the town be a win-win, help these people develop this area for what we paid for it, for $30,000. And
If you give the people written permission to use it, the prescriptive easement goes away.
right, I know, but that would be the total package. You know what
I
I'm
understand.
saying?
I'm just saying,
Is to work with these people that are trying to develop that mill. And at the same token, as the town probably could get something out of that by giving them that property for a measly $30,000 that we paid for it, that they could develop a ramp going to the river and help them out, develop that property. You know, I mean, I know that they're looking for some other things to go along with that, but I think that would be up to the selectmen, whether the three of them or develop a mini committee to investigate what to do with that property. But, you know, just to shut off that guy from going to his garage doesn't make sense to me, that he's been doing it. But I also want to help that business get developed. It's been sitting there, and like Amy just said, it's a dumping ground. It's a mess back there. And the current owners of that mill want to clean that area up. But
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman, Amy and I did discuss this briefly when it came up on the agenda last time and was, tabled because of the procedural issue. And I had passed on the Yukon study to her, and I had said at the time that I don't think that these things are mutually exclusive. But, if the intention is to preserve these benefits on all sides, I agree with John Rice that it's just something that's got to be sat down and negotiated. So for whatever that's worth, I think the approval of the sale is fine. But I would also encourage all parties to have that negotiation, because there is a benefit that could come directly to the town if it's properly done. And I think, I don't think it's as adversarial as the conversation has taken a turn to become.
Yeah, Tara, if I may, the adversarial part is probably with that person wanting access to as a garage, which is up on the top on Route 12, and my knowledge of this endeavor is that they're planning on restructuring that mill where the generator was, and really working that whole area. I think I would like to suggest that probably then selling that property, because if we authorize the selectmen to sell it, then it has to go out for bid.
Correct.
Okay, and my put is that if we authorize the selectmen to dispose of that property as they see fit, then the negotiation comes in with the current owners and see what the town can get out of it. It'd be beneficial to everybody. That's my put. We're
Is
looking to develop the town, welcoming people in, and here we go again, you know, throw the roadblocks
Mr.
up.
Lanky?
I think we're all saying the same thing in different, in different
Well,
ways, guys.
I speak differently than you, Tara, you know that.
Can I just,
So I just got Mr. Lanky and then Ms. St. Ange.
Isn't on the back end of that property along the railroad tracks in the river, don't we have some property that the town ended up with that was negotiated back in 2000 thereabouts? Some a stretch of property along the railroad tracks that goes down to the pond, the Heritage Park area. Isn't that what that was all about with that property too? Is to tie that property in with it to make a better access for walking and whatnot?
If I may, John, that piece of property you're inquiring about is across the river. And
Okay.
it doesn't go down, it goes down quite a ways. I believe there's 12 acres or something that's there that goes to the pond that butts the Knights of Columbus or the former Knights of Columbus.
I wasn't
Sorry,
sure.
Amy, for butting
Yeah,
in.
Ms. St. Ange?
that's okay, John. No, I just wanted to point out that I know there's always the thought that what can the town get out of it? But how about if we just worry about what this developer could get out of it? And offer, put it up to bid, maybe, I'm assuming we'd have to do a minimum bid to recoup the money that was already spent on the property. But just let them, why do we have to have a stake in it? Why do we will get something back when they're successful with their project? But that's just my thought.
If I may, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman, there you go, Amy. I'm thinking that if you and the other people on the Board of Selectmen sit down and talk to these developers and come to a mutual agreement of what would benefit both the developer and the town. If it comes to let's go out for bid and the best man win, well, maybe the owners, I don't know them at all, owners of that mill and things saying, well, I can't do this, I can't do that because I don't own that property, and they would have to renegotiate with the person that bought that property for whatever amount of dollars. I would strongly suggest that.
Absolutely, John. I totally agree with you, and I would absolutely love to meet with the developer and discuss what their plans are and what their vision is, and then help them achieve it.
Again, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I don't know if it's proper. My motion would be, and I'm not making it this time, but just for consideration, is that rather than authorizing the selectmen to sell the property, is to, it's a play on words, but dispose of the property as they see fit. Is that if they figure they would work something out with the developer to the best interest of the town, so be it. If they can't, then sell the property and let it go up for bid.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Mr. Krogel?
I think I would like to make a motion that we table this for a month, and in the meantime, the selectmen speak with the owners of the mill to get their ideas so that we can have a better idea of what we are talking about.
Okay, a motion has been made to table this item till next month's meeting.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Lanky. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes, John Rice.
Mr. Rice?
Here we go again. We're just kicking the can down the road. I'm listening to Tara as the planning development manager or director, is that wants to work with these people. She probably hasn't met them yet, but see what they have. So why do we want to get in? Why can't we just let Tara and the selectmen come up with something? Let's just authorize them to dispose of the property. I hate that, these people have probably bought the property, they're willing to get going on it, and here we go, we kick the can down the road again another month. my
One other
comments.
question. Has anybody talked to Attorney Roberts to get any opinion, his opinion, since he's
Mr. Blackmer, I did in fact talk to the attorney about, you're talking about the easement?
Yep.
Yeah, I did actually talk to him. And that's, like I told you earlier, it was his feeling that the burden of proof was on them and that it would be a costly endeavor for them to try to get the prescriptive easement.
Okay, then I guess I'll go along with what John Rice suggested.
No? Any further discussion? Okay, the motion before us is to table this item until next month's meeting. Hearing no further discussion on the motion, it's a yes to table for a month, no, not to table. Mr. Rice,
No.
Mr. Santos,
Brian Santos, no.
Mr. Poplawski,
Dave Poplawski, no.
Ms. Langlois,
Charlene Langlois, no.
Mr. Lenke,
Yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Christopher Nelson, yes.
Ms. Chattel,
Hell no.
Mr. Blackmer.
Randy Blackmer, no.
Okay, and Joseph Pruitt Brown, no. The motion is defeated. With that, we'll entertain any further motion on this item.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the selectmen of the town of Thompson to dispose of the property located at, keep getting old.
1395.
What was it, 1395?
Yeah,
Yeah,
1395.
the property on 1395 Riverside Drive.
motion been made, seconded by Mr. Blackmer to authorize the Board of Selectmen to dispose of the property located at 1395 Riverside Drive. Any discussion on the motion?
I'm not so sure I like the word dispose of, and I just want to make sure that I know that we're looking out for businesses coming in, but I've seen this on every commission or board that I'm on. We spend thousands of dollars to do all this investigating to find out if it's good for something, and then we don't do anything with it. So if it was made to have a boat launch to help the businesses in the area with the boats and the canoes, and you can do that, then I would like to see that and would hope that the selectmen would make sure that they're pushing for that and not pushing their own agenda. And that when you say dispose of, or if you have a passion for something, you'll go in and you'll passionately sell yourself. If you don't have a passion for something, then you kind of go in and be like, well, I mean, whatever you want to do. I mean, it's up to you. It's not a big deal, and I get it. And so I don't like the word dispose, and I certainly don't feel like there's a word I'm looking for. Like, I don't think that the town works together very well, actually, at all. So I don't trust it. Seems shady to me. Thank you.
Okay, this is Amy St. Ange. Mr. Chairman, if I could just interject one thing. The ordinance for selling town-owned property actually states that it's the disposition of the property. So it is disposing of the property in whatever means it comes down to. If it's over $1,000 that the property is sold for, it has to go to bid. If it's under $1,000, then it can be disposed of without going to bid.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rice.
My put exactly in that terminology of disposing. I was trying to avoid the selling of the property, because as Amy just mentioned, the ordinance stipulates that it has to go out to bid. And to your point, Charlene, is that we now have a directive of planning. And I think her interest is in developing the town. And I feel that along with the selectmen, and I'm talking to Amy also, that she would be part of this committee to look into the disposition, disposing of this property. However they feel, if they work out an agreement, give a little, take a little, that's good for me.
So if we're selling it to the,
No, I'm not saying, that's up to the committee
I think she was
to
asking a
decide
question.
what they're doing with it.
I think she was asking a question, John.
Well, I'm anticipating a question.
well, I'm just saying, if we're selling it to a development to develop the town of Thompson, well, hooray for us. But if we're selling it to a person so he can use his garage, then
No,
shame
Charlene,
on
I
us.
think there's three parties involved here. I think that's what the confusion is. There's the guy with the driveway, there's the guy who wants to develop the mill, and there's the town. I think that's the confusion here. It's too many parties.
Yeah. Yeah. And so,
Like I
again,
said, it's
Mr. Chair,
shady.
yeah, just
Chairman?
before, just a minute, Mr. Lanky, just another point of clarification, right? The ordinance refers to selling, leasing, or otherwise disposing of property. And in any situation where the planning agency approves disposition, which covers all three of those, the selectmen shall publish a notice soliciting bids for proposed sale. So I guess to John's point, regardless of the language we use, the ordinance lays out what happens after approval by this board or not. Mr. Lanky.
if it does go the way, it just goes the way to go out for bid and everything, I think that if we let it go out to bid and all that, that the bid shouldn't be less than the assessment value of the property. And right now I got a piece of paper in front of me. It says the appraisal is for 51.9 and the assessment is for 36.3. And there should, if it goes out for bid, that should be nothing less than 36.3 for the bid. Under that wouldn't be acceptable. It'd have to be that amount or better before I would say for us to let it go for sale. That would be my suggestion into this.
Mr. Chairman, again,
Right.
speaking a lot, but I just have confidence in the selectmen and the director of planning that they would resolve this. I'm trying to stay away from the sale so it doesn't go up for bid. If need be, as I mentioned, if they can't come to agreement with the current owners, and these people own this 1405 Riverside Drive. They own it. There's two people that contacted me about it. And, they own the property and they
That's
want to
right.
develop it. So I think I got my point across. I'm finished.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Any other discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, Mike Kogel.
Mr. Krogel.
From what Amy is saying, anything over $1,000 would have to go out to bid, which does not guarantee the mill owners or anyone else having first rights to it. So it could go against the mill people by selling this property to someone else, and then nobody comes out ahead, but we have to follow the regulations and the statute.
That's
So
correct.
if we authorize the sale, it would have to go out to bid.
That's correct. As I understand the ordinance, the $1,000 marker is where the selectmen are required to receive the advice and consent of this commission. After that, if this commission approves disposition of the property, according to the ordinance, the selectmen shall publish a notice soliciting bids for any proposed sale. So to your point, I think that's where the ordinance leads us. No matter whether we say, sorry, John, no matter whether we say dispose or sale.
Right, it opens it up to all the public.
That's how I read, again, as several of us have said, I'm not a lawyer, but that's how I read the ordinance.
All right, so I guess I'm responsible for the last half hour's discussion. I would move that the selectmen, that the zoning commission authorize the selectmen to move forward with disposition of 1395 Riverside Drive.
Yeah, I think we've actually already got that motion made and seconded.
Who
Okay.
seconded it, Joe?
I actually think it was Randy.
It was Randy.
All right. So that's all we're supposed to be acting on anyway, and that was the request, and I apologize for stirring up a hornet's nest here.
Is that right, Gloria? Was it Randy's second?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Okay, so any further discussion on the motion to approve the disposition of 1395 Riverside Drive? Hearing none, it will be a yes to approve, no to not approve. Mr. Rice,
John Rice, yes.
Mr. Santos,
Brian Santos, yes.
Mr. Poplawski,
David Poplawski, yes.
Ms. Langlois,
Charlene Langlois. No.
Mr. Lenke,
No. John B. Lanky, no.
Mr. Krogel,
Mike Krogel, no.
Mr. Nelson,
Christopher Nelson, no.
Ms. Chattel,
Chattel, yes.
Mr. Blackmer,
Randy Blackmer, yes.
Joseph Ferretti Brown, yes. The motion is approved. Item 12B, Gabriella Prescott, 16 Vandal Street, requesting interpretation of a Yucatan mini pig as a household pet following the Department of Agricultural guidelines for housing a mini pig. Now for something totally different. Ms. Prescott, thank you for being here tonight. Cindy, you looked into this and you wanted to share your findings, Cindy?
Yes, okay, so the property's located in R20, which does not allow livestock. Ms. Prescott wants to bring in 2 Yucatan mini pigs as household pets from Massachusetts. The Agriculture Department requires an official interstate health certificate for reporting of livestock, and also with that, there are several vaccinations that these the animals will have to have. I had a conversation with Officer Charles Delarocco from the state of Connecticut Animal Control, and he stated pigs are considered household pets if they are housed in the home. If they are housed outside of their own structure and have outdoor access, they are considered livestock. Pet swine fall under the medical condition animal necessity with approvals. Pet swine fall under the emotional support animal necessity with approval, but this approval comes under intensive scrutiny from the Ag Department, mainly because people have been using that to extreme to have these pets in their home. Then after I wrote this and sent it out, Mr. Officer Delarocco called me back and he said that the swine representative from the Department of Agriculture, and this person just deals with swine in the department, notified the officer to clarify swine are a carrying disease animal, so they are considered livestock. Now, the house in the home is a Department of Ag regulation. So basically, I know that Gabriella had another question, which I did not get answered today. If she could build an extension onto her home that would house the animals, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gabriella. So that is my research on it. And if you have any questions, or if Gabriella would like to speak, if Tara can unmute her.
She's unmuted. Go ahead, Ms. Prescott.
She's already unmuted.
Hi, Gabriella Prescott here. Yes, so I did have the question of if I can have build a separate property that could be connected to my house, where I could house the pigs. Ultimately, what I do want is to have a separate building not attached to my house to house these pigs. And I'm going to defer to Matthew Prescott, my husband.
Hi, my name's Matthew Prescott. We both live at 16 Vandal Street. I did have a couple of questions for everybody here, actually. The document I was primarily looking at was the current zoning regs. The version that I found online appears to have been from 2012, but updated a couple of times. And they actually do spell out a definition for livestock. It's referring to domesticated animals other than household pets, including without limitations, alpaca, bison, cattle, goats, horses, llamas, poultry, sheep, and swine. And obviously swine is the notable inclusion there, so it seems like it's kind of wrapped up. But I noticed that the operative phrase appears to be other than household pets. And so to me, I think the thing that we'll have to consider is whether or not it meets the standard of household pet, and that's sort of not a black and white issue. I think that there's a lot of evidence currently that suggests that they would be household pets given their size and their temperament. But of course, that would probably be up for you guys to decide. But primarily in my research of these zoning regulations, I wanted to try and answer 3 questions for the board. And the first question was, are they agricultural? And by extension, would they be livestock? And I think that when people hear the word pig, they automatically jump to livestock. It conjures images of farms in much the same way that a cow probably would, or a horse. And cows and horses are obviously things that wouldn't be household pets because they aren't capable of living in a house environment. But mini pigs are a little bit different. They're certainly different than normal pigs in that their size usually doesn't exceed the upper weights that you see in most dogs. And they are a lot more docile. I'll defer to you on whether or not that's the case.
Yes, I actually personally work with these 2 pigs on a daily basis, and I am very familiar with the breed. They do not exceed 200 pounds, and as many people know, Great Danes, Mastiffs do exceed that weight. They are very docile. I actually did look up a study to have a scientific to back me up, and the study did find they were docile, they were gentle, intelligent. They're actually resistant to some diseases, and they do have a significant lack of odor as a mini pig. And that's my information from that.
So, I mean, ultimately, I would want to basically emphasize that if this was a situation where we were adopting 2 large dogs and we wanted to put them in a doghouse, it would kind of be the same thing. It's just when people hear pigs, they just assume farm. So I wanted to just emphasize for everybody here that really what we're trying to do, it's an attempt to formally adopt 2, we would say dog-like mini pigs as 2 non-livestock, non-agricultural house pets. Livestock, of course, using the definition in zoning that implies that it's not a house pet. It seems like it's either one or the other. In much the same way you wouldn't consider your cat livestock, because I think that conjures agricultural sort of attributes. And with that, there's really an expectation that there's some kind of agricultural, what was the word I looked up? Commodity, that's it. And that's also in the zoning definition under agriculture. For it to really be agricultural and by association livestock, there has to be some kind of assumption that there's going to be the buying and selling or raising for some kind of product such as milk, eggs, meat. And these would just be 2 pigs. They're already castrated and we're not going to ever eat them or slaughter them or anything. And they don't produce any milk or eggs. So really they would just be very dog-like in almost every way, really.
Yeah, and I can talk about them for a very long time. I do work with them personally. I actually have target trained them, so they are target trained. Mini pigs are also very easily litter trained, so they would be able to be litter trained in a separate area.
Yeah.
Of
So,
their enclosure.
and what we want to make sure you guys understand, we're not trying to do. This isn't any kind of like farm to table or living with the land operation. No, not an agricultural endeavor as defined by the Connecticut General Statutes. We're definitely not trying to identify as farmers or appear as if we're farmers to other people or to use our land in any way for any kind of farming activities whatsoever. and it's certainly not commercial. So we're not going to be making any money of any kind off of this venture. And again, really, I think it's going to be up to you guys, because mini pigs are sort of uncharted territory. I did read an article in the Washington Post I can furnish for you, where generally, I think nationwide, we're seeing different counties start to accept this line of reasoning, but at the same time, it's not successful in every place. And I certainly don't expect it's going to automatically be successful here. It seems like more often than not, that tends to be the line of reasoning that's accepted, but there are other places that don't see it that way. So, and I work in regulatory, so I'm not bent out of shape if it doesn't work out. I understand, you know, the goals of regulations. I work for medical device regulations, but I understand regulations in general. So really, that's kind of the place that we're coming from. And we'd be happy to answer any questions. We actually had a full presentation, but we know how late it is. We don't want to keep anyone here about pigs, or mini pigs, I should say. So,
well, thank you very much. Cindy, could you just, what was you had spoken with the officer who gave you information about in the house or outside of the house, and then there was something that came in after that?
Yes, there was. And, you know, typical of the state, I don't mean to undermine, the power the state has, or regulations or rules of a department. So I would say with the message that came in and with my conversation with him, and also, by the way, my conversations did start with Jen down at NECOG, and she referred me to the state. You're basically gonna have to, you're gonna have to find an explanation as to why they came in with that, after I had written it up, and it was basically just too late in the day to further pursue that comment.
So, and what was the, I'm sorry, could you
The
remind me
comment was swine are a carrying disease animal, so they are considered livestock.
Okay.
But yet earlier they said,
Right, so they contradicted.
yeah, pet pigs, they have to be housed in a home. They cannot live outside in their own structure. So when Gabrielle asked if she could, build her own, or stated that their intention was maybe down the road to build the own structure, no, they can't do that according to the Department of Ag.
I may just to follow up to that. I don't know if again, I'm not really a subject matter expert myself. Gabby's an animal science major, so she might be a little bit, more than me. But when it comes to whether or not it carries disease as being the criteria for if it's considered livestock, I mean, that seems a little broad in my estimation. Again, not being a subject matter expert, but I mean, almost every living thing carries disease to some capacity, including us. So I'm just using the definition of livestock that was in the zoning regs. But I know that one may not be perfect or all encompassing either. But I'm just trying to be consistent.
Yeah, and yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
In my first conversation with Jen, she did list what they had to be inoculated for, and definitely one was rabies, and the other two were two huge medical words. But I figured any health official knows what they have to be inoculated for. I'm just kind of looking for my notes, but I don't know. Right
if I may respond to that, I have been in communication with the veterinarian at my work where I would be getting these pigs from, and they are more than willing to give them all of the vaccinations, and they did include rabies as one of them, and whatever they need, as well as any health certifications needed for transport from a different state, and everything that would be required of them, they would provide. So there's no question of, am I able to get them vaccinated for rabies or any other disease? I rest assured that everything will be covered upon transportation.
And to further assuage your concerns, hopefully, number two of the three things, I actually never finished talking about the three things, so my apologies for that. But number two was making sure that the question of would they effectively be house pets, and that are they capable of sustaining life in a house? Would they be able to live in a household? And also, would we be able to meet their basic needs if they were in a household, being animals? And as part of that, I wanted to make sure that I let everybody know that we're already in contact with a veterinarian that would be able to come up from, I think it's Tolland.
Yes.
So all the shots, all the medical treatment, and again, I personally am not as familiar with it, but I mean, Gabby works with these actual pigs every day, and she's very well acquainted with the regulations surrounding making sure that you caretake them the right way. I want you to know this very much isn't a situation where we like the idea of having pigs, kind of like a small child that wants their first animal and has no idea what's involved in taking care of it. This is something that we're only enterprising to do because we've well researched it, or at least I should say she has, and I'm just there kind of as the moral support from a regulatory standpoint. And then while I'm going down the list before I forget, the third item I wanted to make sure I addressed is whether or not they're a nuisance, because I'm reading right here off of for our R20 area, and I'll just read it for you real quick. It says single family or duplex dwellings and accessory outbuildings or structures for exclusive use by the inhabitants of the dwelling. I think that's talking about, you know, areas that could be affected in a private residence, of which I think that both our house and it seems an outbuilding or a potential outbuilding would meet this regulation. I imagine that the reason they say outbuildings is because people have dog houses. So it's a similar line of reasoning, I think. If you can have a dog that is part of your family, but it lives outside, as long as it's well housed and cared for appropriately, they don't have to be in the building necessarily. I'll let you guys decide if that applies to pigs, but I'm just going based off of general reasoning here. The second sentence is household pets such as dogs, cats, rabbits, and hamsters may be kept on the premises. So I think that's important to note because it seems like that establishes that not all animals or creatures are created equal when it comes to this regulation. And it says maybe, so it doesn't necessarily say will be, of course. So may is the operative word, subject to change, but it seems like there is a classification called household pets that implies that they aren't regulated in the same way that livestock would be. And I want to go back to rabbits in a second because that was something I had thought about. They followed up with, but no cattle, horses, sheep, goats, pigs. Again, we're going to call out pigs. They say it right there. But they follow it with, or other livestock, which to me indicates that this clause is referring to livestock animals for an agricultural purpose. And again, we can go back to the definition of livestock, at least in the zoning regulations in the same document I'm reading. And I think that there's a lot of proof that if you're not using it for an agricultural purpose, it wouldn't be livestock per se any more than a pet rabbit would be livestock. And going back to rabbits, I think that's the perfect example of something that would qualify as livestock if I were to have, let's say I really liked rabbits and I had 20 pet rabbits. I'd be a rabbit guy, it'd be kind of weird, but if I wasn't selling them for meat, they'd be technically pets. But then if I was, for example, slaughtering them and selling for meat, then I think absolutely they would be livestock, but it's the same type of rabbit. So I think livestock is less about pig definitely equals livestock. And I think livestock's more about what's the intended purpose of the animal, and are you husbanding it, or are you simply caring for it as a family pet? So that addresses hopefully the livestock concern. The last sentence is chickens, turkey, or other fowl, bees, or other animals which may pose a nuisance to neighbors. So when I saw chickens, I thought, well, that's interesting, because kind of like rabbits, I guess you technically could house a chicken in a house and it wouldn't be a problem. And you don't necessarily have to use it for agricultural reasons. So why are chickens not good? And it says it right there, because every morning a rooster is going to make a really loud noise and wake up all the neighbors. And although you can technically house it in your house, regardless of that fact, it's a nuisance no matter what, because it's making a lot of noise and generating complaints. And, in a R20 area, that's not something that people want to have to deal with, and I don't blame them. So the final thing on my list was making sure that we can show everybody here that mini pigs are not nuisance generating in general, but at the very least, not any more than a dog of the same size would be. And maybe you can speak to that.
I work with these pigs again. They make no more noise than a dog barking when somebody comes home. The 20 seconds that you're getting their food bowl ready, they're loud. They want their food. I've developed ways to limit their noise, throw a couple carrots in there before I get their food bowl in there. They're pretty easygoing.
And I'd also like to add, we're gonna, assuming, I'm not assuming anything, but if this were to go through and we were to get the approval, I think it says somewhere else, I'd have to find it, but you want to make sure that you're keeping them in well-built. And in our cases, we would insulate it even if it wasn't regulation, both from a temperature standpoint, for the comfort of the animal, but also from a sound standpoint as well. And that's something we would take very seriously.
Thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate all that information. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, commissioners, I guess the question before us is, are mini pigs livestock or are they household pets?
It's up to you guys. And there's no right answer or wrong answer.
The decision before this commission.
Well, I think many pigs can be considered household pets, if you will, versus commercial livestock. I can't say that I want one in my house, but I've seen mini pigs treated as household pets. And my feeling, as far as the disease thing, I agree with what the gentleman said. Most any animal carries some disease, and many pigs are, especially if they're vaccinated, et cetera, and taken care of in the residential setting, shouldn't be exposed to other diseases.
Great, thank you, Randy.
Mr. Chairman, John Rice.
Rice.
Just reading the paperwork that Cindy forwarded to us, assuming everybody got it. It just says that Yucatan miniature pigs weigh roughly the same as the average human male, 150 to 200 pounds. Is that your experience, Gabriel? Or have you had the experience of these pigs when they're fully grown? Because you're looking at a 200-pound pig running around your apartment.
Yeah, so my experience with them, mini pigs do generally grow at a slower rate than your average domestic pig. There is a giant difference between a mini pig and a domesticated, like what your average farm pig would be. They would grow up to upwards of 700 plus pounds when they normal non-mini pigs.
Right.
They can exceed 700 pounds full grown. In my experience, the pigs that I've worked with, yes, they do not exceed, I haven't seen them exceed like 180 pounds. The study that I looked at online, like a research scientific article, they did a study on 76 Yucatan mini swine, comparing their body weights to other species of pig. I can't think of it right now. Multiple species or breeds of pigs, and they found that the maximum weight, and I wrote it down here, the maximum weight of that study that they found was 195.8 pounds at 2 years old. And that is fully grown, and that was actually mature adult boars. And it is also my experience that boars will grow a little bit bigger than a castrated male, which doesn't have much testosterone left in its body, so it's not going to grow to the size of a boar.
And one more thing, if I can also add, before I lose my train of thought. Wow. Mini pig size. Oh, yes. I didn't realize this until I was looking for a size comparison for the purposes of the board, but I guess Mastiffs can be up to 300 pounds, which is, I didn't even realize that. But my mom has a half Australian Shepherd, half Golden Retriever, and that thing can almost knock me over when it rears up. And pigs don't even rear, but if they could, I'd imagine it would be similar in mass. Some dogs can get very large. And of course, you'd want to make sure you take the same precautions with dogs as we would here. In terms of fencing and stuff, but I think it would be comparable to a heavier breed of dog based off of what I've seen anyways.
Thank you, yeah. Thank you. Anything else?
At the risk of dragging this out, Mr. Chairman, I just want to interject one brief point that one of my sister-in-laws has a mini pig in her very small house in LA County. So
wow.
there is in fact precedent for miniature pigs as household pets in much denser areas than in Thompson.
Thank you.
Just my 2 cents. I think if there is a relevant question here, because, you know, I don't think you need to belabor this, it's just what's the manure management strategy? I think that's the real concern that everybody would have if there's a legitimate concern.
Like I said, they can be litter trained, and honestly, I'm not an expert on like waste management in my own home for this purpose. My experience is more at work. I'm able to dispose of the waste. Like I would dispose of any cat litter that I pick up, throw in a bag and throw away.
Or dogs probably would be more of a apt comparison. And we'd probably go out in the yard and pick it up the same way, you know, pooper scooper and put it in a little bag and
Yeah, I would
call it a
litter
day.
train them and then scoop it every single day. I can have a waste basket in their enclosure that I would empty out the night before the trash pickup, and to prevent any odors that would emit from it.
Great. Thank you.
Next line.
Okay, so what action would the commission like to take?
This is a toughie. I don't know. Mr. Chair,
Mr. Lenke.
if I may, this couple here, I see their intent and everything, and like Randy, I know some people that have these type of mini pigs as households, and they have to meet all the requirements, like she said, like a dog or a cat or a rabbit. They have to have all the shots and everything, and do their annual physicals and inspection, I believe. Would that be correct? Gabriel, Ms. Prescott?
Yes, we will definitely keep up with all veterinary care annually, or whatever the requirements are for mini pig.
It's going to be a tough one here, Mr. Chairman, you know, because this is something new as far as I'm concerned, and we never had this, so.
Yeah.
It's not lost that this would create a precedent, and we understand completely that that's probably the one way.
It will set a precedent.
Yes.
And it's, you know, I mean, I know you're going to be due diligence to do your with all the, you know, taking the vets, you have to have a record of it and all this other stuff. So there's, you know, my thing is, well, it's going to have to come down to, just like we register our dogs and cats and everything, there's that other line that we might have, because that has to be looked at too, you know. So, like I said, it's opening up a door that we never thought would be open, I guess.
We understand.
It's going to
Mr.
be
Chairman,
tough.
if I may,
Bryce?
if Mr. Linke's finished.
Yes, go ahead, Bryce.
Tara, this is for the planner. Are we addressing this issue somewhat in the new regulations?
We
As far as
are.
in that zone?
Of course, you would ask me when I don't have the draft in front of me.
Of course.
I mean, agriculture is allowed in every in every zone, but we're making the case, or the Gabrielle and her husband are making the case that this is not agriculture. I would agree with that. I believe that these are household pets, and that you know, they have to manage the manure of their household pets just as somebody with a dog or a cat would. I think there's plenty of precedent nationwide that these are pets. It's just it's a gray area in the language of the regulations, but you know, I think we've spent a lot of time on this, and you guys just essentially have to decide if the PZC wishes to consider these animals livestock and therefore subject to the zoning regulations, or if PZC does not consider these animals livestock and they're pets and you can have a pet. I think that's the question before the commission.
I would
Because,
move that we
Joe,
consider-
Mr. Perotti, is that, Mr. Chairman, I guess the, mention of different type pigs, but, you're looking at a pot-bellied pig is a smaller, much smaller pig. In the information that Cindy sent us, I guess I'm wrestling with the miniature pigs weigh roughly the same as a human being, 150 to 200 pounds.
Yeah, but John, my best friend is a Newfoundland breeder.
Is a 200 pounder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Randy, did you want to make the motion, Randy?
Yeah, I would move that we not consider them agricultural animals, that they be classified in the household pet category, and allow these people to move forward with their
I will second it.
Mr. Blackmer has moved to accept Yucatan mini pigs as household pets, seconded by Mr. Krogel. Any further discussion on the motion?
I just want to add,
Mr. Chair? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Rice?
No.
go ahead, John.
Just the side note for Tara is that maybe when we revisit this, or you revisit this, and be specific as far as the pigs and identify that as a Yucatan pig, that way they're, in our regulations, so rather than just pigs, and get away with that in our regs.
I'll take a look at it, John.
Yeah.
Brian?
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the Prescotts that if you can just keep your paperwork on your vet appointments and medical history, just in case this comes up in the future, that we have some sort of documentation proving that it's a household guideline pet.
Understood.
Absolutely.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, it's yes for a pet, no for livestock. Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Santos?
Ryan Santos, yes.
Mr. Poplawski?
David Poplawski, yes.
Ms. Langlois?
Charlene Langlois, yes.
Mr. Lanky?
John B. Lanky, yes.
Mr. Krogel?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Mr. Nelson, yes.
Ms. Chattel?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Blackmer?
Randy Blackmer, yes.
Joseph Prody Brown, I'm going to vote no. I think the language in our current regulations doesn't allow for this. I am very sympathetic to the points that everyone's made and hope that we fix it in our future regulations. But as it comes down to it, my no doesn't matter much. So enjoy your pigs. Thanks very much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much. We couldn't thank you enough. Thank you.
Item 12C, Mike Bogdansky of Quest Martial Arts, requesting interpretation of sign regulations for 56 Riverside Drive, R20, Zone 56. 56 Riverside is a non-conforming business location.
Okay, I gotta find my memo. Mike bought this building and moved his business from Putnam to Thompson. Am I on? Yeah.
Yep.
From Putnam to Thompson, and to put his Quest Martial Arts business in there. And of course it is, we said, yes, you can move in there because it was a non-conforming business operation before him. So the question now he has is on the signs. I sent you what he sent me that he wants for signs. I have to be very honest with you. This is the first time signs has been an issue in the 2.5 years I've been here. So as I said, I drove around town, and some businesses have 1 sign, 2 signs, 3 signs, and of course your convenience stores and your spirit stores have a lot of signs advertising their products. So I believe it's just is going to be a decision as to if you're going to allow him to put the signs up like he wants to, 1 on the road and 2 on the building. and saying karate, and then the letters Quest Martial Arts. I had sent you copies of that. So it's just up for discussion according to your regulations. And that's it. There was one place in town that did have a sign above the roof, which I was surprised at because that's not allowed at all, but whatever.
It would take you to notice it.
Well, for this particular drive around town, I was looking for signs.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I believe, Cindy, that the sign, whatever sign you're talking about, can protrude above the roof line, but there's a certain height.
Height, okay.
But, I'm looking at the information that you sent along, and that the building mounted signs, you say karate 2 by 18, is that 2 inches by 18 inches or 2 feet by 18 feet?
No, it's probably 2 feet by 18 feet.
And the same as that across the window, 1 by 18, so is that 1 foot by 18 feet?
Yeah, 1 foot
I
by
assume?
18, yes.
Oh, wow. All right, I'll listen to the other comments from this other commissioners before I
John,
say
did you
something.
see the picture, the rendering that
Yes.
she included?
Yep.
Showing what the signs would look like.
Yes. The question, did everybody get that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ranking.
It's Ms. Dunn, she also said he had a couple signs out near the road.
Those are, yeah, like if you look at the picture again, they're like small, you know, like when like a paving company does a driveway and they stick that in the yard, it's like that kind of sign, according to the picture that was provided. So,
Why does he need the signs out there?
So it looks like those signs, Joe, Mr. Chairman, is that the ones that you just talked about are kind of a temporary nature.
Oh, yeah, the ones that are there now are temporary.
Yeah, I would suggest, and if everybody's ready to make a motion to have the applicant follow regulations pertaining to the sign in the NC zone, the neighborhood commercial zone, seeing how we don't have regulations in that R20 for signs. I would like to see them, seeing how it is a neighborhood and it's been grandfathered as commercial. I think he probably could meet the regulations in an NC zone.
okay, motion has been made to apply the regulations for the NC zone to this property regarding signs.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Nelson. Any discussion on the motion? I would say that it sounds like a good plan to me, John.
That's because you're getting tired.
No.
Well, I think it's an advantage to the town to have such a thriving business join to the town of Thompson.
Mm-hmm. And like those signs, I think, would fit into the nature of that neighborhood.
I'll make a motion then to accept the business and the signage as is, as Mr. Rice had said about following our regulations.
So
For neighborhood commercial.
For that NC,
Yes.
yep.
I just have a quick question.
Yeah, Charlene.
So, Tara, are the regulations that are in the old book, are they different for the new book that were the new zoning regs that we're going to be doing for signage in that area?
I believe they will be slightly different. I was actually just looking up the property on the parcel map and comparing it to the rendered, the proposed, and assuming that I have the right property here, it's hard to sort of scroll back and forth. The property is going to fall in the Corridor Development District, which is definitely more permissive than the residential only districts. So it's probably appropriate, since you can only work with the regulations that are currently before you to make your decision, it's probably most appropriate to allow them according to what is currently neighborhood commercial. I think that's the best analog you can come up with.
Thank you, Tara. Does that answer your question, Charlene?
Well, I guess, I mean, if it was my business and I was moving in and I had to follow old regs, only to find out in 3 or 4 months that the new regs, I could have had better signage, I'd be ripping mad. So I guess, like, it's not like the regs that we have now, they're new and they're gonna last us for 12 years. We're working on them. So I think that we should, if we can, take into consideration that we have some new ones coming up and give the businesses the signage that they're gonna be able to have. Not be after the fact saying, oh, shucks, if you just would have waited 3 more months, you could have had a great sign, but stinks to be you.
Well, I mean, in neither instance are the sign regulations like crazy permissive, you know, no neons, no flashers, no this, no that. The general proposed draft has, we moved the signs, somebody's got a lot of feedback. We moved the signs out of the individual districts to one special article at the back. I've got them open in front of me. You know, no lights. Valid as issued for a period of 5 years. No new sign shall be erected that is larger in dimension than 32 square feet in size. What was the larger sign, somebody said?
2 by 18.
2 by 18.
So that does exceed slightly, so he'd have to shrink his dimensions there, but, you know, to 2 by 16.
Unless he's approved ahead of time. Right,
unless he's approved, yeah, and then that's true, and then he gets grandfathered in, you know, if that fits under the neighborhood commercial. So I guess the roundabout way to answer your question, Charlene, is it's not significantly more permissive. It's just more uniform. The new guidelines.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, a yes vote will apply the signing regulations from the NC district to this property. A no vote will not. Mr. Rice.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah, Ms. Langlois.
No, this is Gloria.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gloria.
Yeah, there were 2 motions. One motion was made by John Rice and seconded by Chris Nelson. There was another motion that didn't get a second. So which motion are we going with?
We're voting on Mr. Rice's motion.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry. Mr. Rice.
Yes.
Mr.
I thought you had a question.
Oh, no, that was a vote.
John Rice, yes.
Mr. Santos.
Brian Santos, yes.
Mr. Poplawski.
Dave Poplawski, yes.
Mr. Lenke.
John B. Lenke, yes.
Mr. Krogel.
Mike Krogel, yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Christopher Nelson, yes.
Ms. Chattel.
Christine Chattel, yes.
Mr. Blackmer.
Randy Blackmer, yes.
Ms. Langlois.
Charlene Langlois, yes.
Joseph Perotti Brown, yes. Item 13, commissioners' comments.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lenke.
2 things that I'd like to bring up, and it'll be on, you know, the rest of the commissioners can jump in anytime they want. First of all, I would like to see our ZEO hours moved back to 25 hours like it used to be when John Mahan was here, and that the hours that she's putting in, that she's doing now, is not enough to do what she's doing, especially when it takes away from her desk. work and everything when she has to go out and do complaints or applications, to review applications out in the field. So I personally would like to see her get the 25 hours back. And if the rest of the commission feel the same, that would be something I would recommend to you. And I would make that motion to have you go to the Board of Finance to get her hours pushed up to 25. Now, my other thing to that is she does not really, because I asked some questions to some other people that used to be on the Board of Finance from years back or whatever, Board of Selectmen, and on the Planning and Zoning. I guess there's a thing about anything over 20 hours, they're supposed to get insurance, but if she's willing to waive the insurance, that's a yes or a no answer for her. I think it's something we need to pursue. That's the first thing. And the other thing I want to bring up to you is I think we need to bite the bullet and see about doing our own Zoom meetings instead of borrowing from everybody else. And this way we have control of the meetings in-house. That's my second thing. So now it's up to you. You decide what you want to do. Push this forward or let it go.
Thank you, Mr. Link. I certainly appreciate any thoughts from the commission on either of those items.
Well, I think that if we're asking her, this is Charlene, if we're asking for more things to be done with less hours, then it's kind of dumb on our part. I mean, we want her to be the CEO. We want her to find out if there's anything going on, if there's people dumping garbage, if people aren't doing permits, if people aren't, but then she has to sit at her desk because of her hours. So if she's willing to, what Mr. Linky said, waive the insurance, and we can go in front of the Board of Finance and start paying what we owe people for their jobs that they're doing. That would be a great idea.
I think we need to find out what her thoughts are and how this is affected by the town hall is all union, I think, and what impact that'll have on it.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Linky?
To Mr. Blackmer's, what he just said is that I talked, like I said, before I even thought about bringing this, because I feel Ms. Dunn deserves these hours, and for what she's doing, I mean, but the whole thing behind it is I talked to people that were on the Board of Selectmen, they were on the Board of Finance, they were on the Planning and Zoning, and there were various people I went to and asked their opinion, and they said there's really nothing why can't it be done? Why can't you bring it? Why can't it be brought back to 25 hours? Rightly so, because that's how John Mahan, God rest his soul, he had the 25 hours, but the only thing is he had the insurance. Here, it's up to Cynthia. If she would, she just, pass on the insurance, I think that would even help this cause even more to get the hours back. That's all we're looking for is hours. We're not looking for the insurance. But that's up to her too. She, yes or no on that. That's a question you need to ask her.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rice.
I believe this is an area that has to be discussed with the first selectman, because you're going to get into the union, and I'm not sure if you can waive that benefit package for an individual once they meet that number of hours to be working. I'm relatively sure that that's nothing the commission can do. And also is that the monies that's in this year's budget probably wouldn't cover it. So I don't know, you'd have to go back to the Board of Finance and ask for more money for that line item. That's it.
Thank you. So definitely some moving pieces to to investigate.
Don't know until you try it. Ask it and
Correct,
go.
yeah. Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Lenke.
This is Amy St. Ange. I'll speak, if I may, as
Yep.
first selectman. In regard to the salary increase, I wasn't certain, but I believe that Cindy didn't want to go over the 19 hours. However, as the Board of Selectmen did propose a salary increase this year, and it was taken out by the Board of Finance. It was not taken out by the Board of Selectmen. It was reduced by the Board of Finance. It was our intention to increase her pay significantly.
Hey guys, can I just interject here? We're getting dangerously close into the kind of topic that would be an executive session topic, which is talking about people's hours and salaries. And I think possibly this should be taken up, if it's something that Cindy would like to pursue, possibly something that should be taken up during office hours between her and me and Amy and Orla.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, but the budget is public knowledge, and it was what.
That's true. That's true.
That's all. That's as far as I was going with that.
No, it wasn't directed at you, Amy. It was just the topic of conversation in general. I think we're skirting a little bit into sensitive territory.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, points taken. Any other citizens' comments?
No.
I mean, commissioners' comments.
Oh, you're getting tired, Joe.
Yeah.
I just want to apologize to Cindy in that in the current regulations, she mentioned about the sign above the top of a wall. The signs attached to a building shall not exceed above the top of a wall or roof to which they are attached. So.
Cindy 1, John 0.
You got it. You got it.
Anything else from the commissioners? Okay, item 14, our next meetings. We will meet on Wednesday. That's this Wednesday, June 24th at 6 p.m. via Zoom for a subcommittee meeting on regulations review, and our next regular meeting on July 27th, 2020 at 7 p.m. also via Zoom. Item 15, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move.
Nobody wants to leave, but I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mr. Blackner. We'll give it a second to Mr. Rice. This meeting is adjourned at 9:48 p.m. Thank you and good night.
Good night. Bye-bye. Bye.